to Suarez. Goodell comes running in. He's under it, makes the catch. Here's the throw to the plate. It's in the air. He is out! Cameron Rick hangs on! Oh, man, what a play! Deep to right field. Way up there and way out! Second
And welcome back to the Stupid Money Podcast. This is the NLDS preview. And, I'm dreading this. I know you're not. But Phillies are going to face the Mets after the Mets down 2-0 last night in Game 3 of the wild card round to the Brewers. Devin Williams on the mound. And they hit it. Pete Alonso hits a 3-run home run, and that's that. And now the Mets are on their way. They're actually here, I guess, already. To Philadelphia, and it starts tomorrow morning. Let me think about this. So I'm going to post this evening. Tomorrow afternoon starts the NLDS. Zach Wheeler versus Kodai Senga, who is making his second start of the season. He has 3 innings under his belt this year, right? Something like that.
Yeah, about.
Yeah.
About that.
Damn. I mean, look, dude. I here's what I'm going to say. I'm going to go on a little spiel here, and then you could call me an idiot or whatever you want to say. The Phillies have home field advantage. They've been very good at home this year. The Phillies have, on paper, a starting rotation advantage. I know for sure they have a bullpen advantage. I feel good about that. I think the lineups are relatively even because I think the Phillies have more big names, but I think the Mets have more guys kind of outperforming their career norms this year. A lot of the things, when you take in those variables, favor the Phillies. But when I look at this Mets team, I see the 2022 Phillies. I see the 2023 Diamondbacks. I see that freaking 2011 Cardinals team. I see the 21 Braves. It looks the same. And the 3-run home run against Devin Williams, who gave up 3 freaking runs all year this year, cemented that for me. There's no real reason why the Phillies should lose this series under logical terms. What I'm feeling now has nothing to do with baseball. It is just that feeling you see with a team when Lindor hit that go-ahead home run in the 9th inning of that marathon against the Braves in that doubleheader on Monday, and then they didn't skip a beat, went into Milwaukee and won Game 1, and then coming back in Game 3 to winning it. I don't feel good because it's not logical what's happening. And you could say, oh, the Mets pitching has been used so much this week. How can they sustain this? I don't know. Cause remember in 2022, the Phillies weren't home for 17 days or whatever to end the season. And we're like, oh shit. I don't know if we're going to see them again. And the next time they saw them, it was 1-1 in the NLDS. And then they won 2 straight and ended up in the championship series. The Mets are pretty much on that same trajectory right now. They left for Atlanta, ended up only playing 1, then went to Milwaukee, then played the crazy doubleheader. Then we're in Milwaukee all week this week, and now spend the weekend in Philadelphia. So they've been pretty much out of New York for 2 weeks now by the time they get back there on Monday and won't play there till Tuesday. So exactly 2 weeks. To me, this just feels like the same exact thing. I don't feel good at all. I would have felt way better against the Brewers because they're perennial chokers, which some people were like, oh, well, they beat the Brewers. The Brewers haven't won a playoff series since 2018. I get that. But I don't know. I'll say this. If the Phillies get by this, I'm picking them in every series that goes on after it because I think they're running into the version of themselves from 2 years ago.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you in the sense that the Mets team has something going on right now that kind of not defies logic because their roster is good, and they showed that they were good consistently since the London series at the end of May, but abnormal things are happening right now in abnormal situations. I think that was the second home run that Devin Williams allowed this season. we have seen video since then to kind of indicate that he was tipping pitches as far as that inning went, but still he has, freakish stuff, the airbender changeup. So even when he's tipping, difficult guy to hit off of just because of the movement that his stuff has. But I think, I don't feel great about the series because of those vibes that Mets team has. But I honestly think, you're talking about the fact that they have similar thing with the 2022 Phillies and last year's Diamondbacks, stuff like that. And the one that kind of sticks out to me in terms of like just baseball is last year's Diamondbacks. And I actually was watching that series and somewhat hoping the Mets would win because that Brewers team reminded me so much of last year's Diamondbacks. A sick bullpen, a 20-year-old superstar outfielder, and a team that kind of singles you to death, and then these nobody lefty outfielders or platoon pinch hitters lucking into home runs. I was just watching them play and getting PTSD of what that Diamondbacks team did to us. They run a lot. They're very good defensively. If they get the ball, obviously Williams choked it away last night. But 9 times out of 10, if they get the ball to their 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th inning guys, it is very difficult to score runs off of them. So, I watched that series. The Mets pitching didn't really overwhelm me. Sean Manaea pitched good. We've seen him have a resurgence this year, but he has a career 16 earned run average in the playoffs. A lot of that is, I think he might have one start in Oakland, but the majority of that is what we did to him here in Philadelphia the year the Padres went to the NLCS. Severino gave up 4 runs, did not look sharp at all. And sure, Jose Quintana went 6 shutout last night. He was throwing 90 belt high, and the Brewers just didn't do anything with it. They bailed him out to an extent.
Isn't that's the concern we have with this team, though?
Sure, but the Mets pitching did not wow me. Obviously, Senga being back is a different story, and I saw a tweet. We talked about what the Phillies' new approach was this year in terms of trying to chase less, sacrificing some home runs to stay in the strike zone more, and that tests a lot. I think Senga I think his numbers last year in terms of strike zone rate, he is the 3rd lowest strike zone rate in baseball, behind Dylan Cease and stuff in terms of pitching effectively outside of the zone. So that chase rate is really going to have to stay consistent, and it's tough because of how he throws that changeup. But honestly, I feel a little bit better with Senga pitching as I do the alternative, which was probably going to be Tyler McGill. I just have visions of that dude starting the combined no-hitter at Citi Field a few years ago, and his changeup dropping off the table. I know he's not great number-wise, but he seems to always pitch well against us. So, I'm kind of fine with the guy, the top-line starter that hasn't pitched much and is coming back off an injury. We saw that in NLDS with Strider a few years ago. This wasn't an arm injury like Strider's was, but still, he hasn't since I have to believe that means something in terms of his effectiveness. He had the quote today that whether they ask me to go 10 or 200, I'll be good. But one start a year, I know it's the playoffs. I know it's the NLDS. You can't always play for next year, but this guy's a big contract. They're giving him a lot of money, and they have intentions of going for Soto and going for bigger fish next season. Mets do. So I find it hard to believe that they'll sacrifice their ace at this year when it's early in the playoffs. But their bullpen, they don't really have a lefty. I'd assume that one of their starters, whether it's Manaea, Quintana, or Peterson, will move back there. But other than that, they really don't have anything. All of their lefties got hurt earlier in the year. So, that was one of the things I like more about the Brewers, but with the rotation being majority righties as opposed to this Mets team that has a lot of lefties. But the bullpen, we've seen in the past, especially with how our playoff games have gone and just in general watching baseball playoffs kind of since that 2015 Royals team, the playoffs are get to the bullpen as quickly as possible and shorten the game. We, like you said, we definitely have the upper hand on the Mets in that sense. So I feel good about that. But realistically, the series is going to come down to Zach Wheeler having 2 starts for us. That's massive. Second all time in playoff whip. I think his whip in the playoffs is .73, and the career leader is .7. So, a good start tomorrow, and he can easily retake that crown. So getting him twice is huge, and both of those starts would probably line up at home. I think they made the right call going with Sanchez for game 2. We've talked to a large extent.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up.
Month, the home and road stats. That was the decision, and it's going to come down to the bats. We've seen the bats go quiet last year, the World Series. It's going to come down to what do especially the top of the lineup guys do. Schwarber has a big chance to set the tone tomorrow in that first inning. We've seen him hit a lot of big leadoff home runs to start series, to start seasons. His first at bat here is a leadoff home run. He's got a chance to set the tone for, a fan base that just looking through social media has a bit of nerves right now. And I think that stems from us being in the Mets shoes and going up against the Braves the last few years, where we kind of are that cocky underdog that, we steamroll the wild card team and roll into an NLDS hot. I don't know how the layoff will affect us. It's a shame that the Braves fell victim to another long layoff this year. So maybe next year for them. But, everything that they've said, they're saying the right things about how they're going about the layoff and how they're affecting or approaching it with rest. I think they definitely needed it with injuries. But, based on some of the things that they've said, obviously Harper homering off Tanner Banks doesn't do too much for me just because it's Tanner Banks, but more so on the angle of Harper's putting good swings on lefties that, have a little funky angle, because Sean Manaea drops really low, and he's going to have to face Sean Manaea, multiple times throughout the series. So if the big bats are putting good swings on balls, I feel good about where we're at.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to come down to the offense. If they don't score, they're not going to win. And honestly, the last couple of series against the Mets, they didn't hit all that well outside of maybe, one game?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh, I don't know. Yeah, the offense concerns me. Obviously, we're worried about the bottom half of the lineup even being able to put the bat on the ball at this point. We're talking about Stott as a platoon player. We know what Rojas is. Marsh has gotten a little hot towards the end of the season, which is good because that strikeout rate was just astronomical for a while. Castellanos was hot. Turner, Harper, Schwarber were off and on. Real Muto was starting to look good though, and he's gotten a week off, which I don't know if anyone, except Harper's elbow, I don't know if that benefits anyone more than him. They got to put pressure on the Mets, and Trey Turner, it really seems like he dialed a lot back in the regular season. He needs to run the bases. He needs to be aggressive. He needs to steal. They got to steal runs because they did not do a whole lot of homering against the Mets in those last 7 we saw them play in September. So they got to steal runs. They got to play small ball. They got to bunt. They got to do the little things, and they can't make mistakes. The Brewers really screwed themselves, and they ended up winning game 2, but they lost game 1 because they kept dropping balls. The first baseman tossing it to the catcher, they dropped 2 of them, and it cost them pretty much game 1. It's how they lost. And if they don't hit, a crazy miracle home run in the 8th inning of game 2, that's probably why they lose that game. So you got to be sound defensively. They really just have to hit. And I like Nola game 3 because if it's 1-1, obviously it's a critical game. You'd rather him there than Sanchez, I think. And if it's 2-0, you feel good about him ending it. And if it's 0-2, at least you think you have a chance to extend it. get yourself to a bullpen game in Game 4 and then pray for Wheeler in Game 5. I mean, that I like that. I think that definitely helps. But yeah, these guys got to hit. It's really comes down to that. They have to be able to score at least 4 or 5 runs a game. I mean, they're so hit or miss in the playoffs. I don't know. I'm interested to see how this goes because they've been kind of the hunter the last couple go-rounds, and we saw them when they got into the hunted position at the end of the NLCS last year. It didn't go well. And now you're kind of in the hunted position again. And the Mets are this hungry hunter, and I don't know how it's going to go. And I know there's a lot between these teams. They've seen each other a lot, but if the Mets end up beating them, the Mets got into the playoffs by 1 game, and Castellanos hit into the dumbest double play I've ever seen in my life in London, and I will blame that for the rest of eternity. So there you go.
Yeah, I mean, if you just kind of look at the games they've played this year, I know they finished 7-6 against the Mets.
Mm-hmm.
3 of those losses were Taijuan Walker starts, and
Yeah.
there were a lot of 1-run games mixed in there that could have gone either way. So, they beat up on them a bit earlier in the season when they weren't, this form of the Mets team. They went 3-1 against them in early May before the London series, and then they split in London. So you're 4-2 at that point, and then we all know how the last few weeks went. We handled them here, and they handled business up in New York a bit. So yeah, I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see how. I mean, tomorrow to me, Saturday is Game 1, the most important game of the series, because you're getting not a beat up Kodai Senga, but you really don't know what you're going to get from him. Like I said, he made the comment on the pitch count, but you have to wonder how long that leash is going to be, just in terms of he's made 1 start all year, and it was in July. Apparently, he's been healthy. He could have gone the last 2 weeks or so, but he said he wasn't pitching until he was 100%. It just so happens to be now. But you're kind of getting them at a potential bullpen game, and if the offense comes out, jump, you have a chance to put them even further behind the 8 ball the rest of the series. Milwaukee extending that wild card series to 3 games is huge, just because they had to bring Quintana, who, back Cardinals wild card series in 2022, has pitched very well against the Phillies. I think was he Game 1 of that? Yeah, I think he was Game 1 of that wild card series, and he went
Mike
6 or 7 shutout against us. It's nice that they won't have to see him until later. But the problem is, if you even split in Philly, you're kind of giving yourself a chance to see those better starters towards the end of the series for the Mets. Whereas if you handle business, Game 1 against, you don't know what you're going to get with Senga / McGill / damage their bullpen, and then Luis Severino, who wasn't awful the other night, but gave up 4 runs, I think, to a Brewers team. They jumped on him early. I just have this image ingrained in my head from him, giving up a bunch of runs in an Astros wild card game against the Yankees a few years back. So I think I said this last time, I don't have any stat to back up what his postseason ERA is, but I just, can picture him getting hit. So I don't want to get to a point in the series where, either tied with the offense struggling, or, tied in a bad spot where we see Manaea and Quintana, who are 2 rather difficult lefties. That feels like a situation where the offense is going to go out sad. So if you can do your work early in the series, back Wheeler tomorrow, and kind of net field advantage, I think that's one of the reasons why I just find myself a bit nervous the last few years in these series where we're the away team. It's steal 1 on the road and then get back to Citizens Bank Park. Well, now it looks, we're looking at it from the other side, where if you don't win both at home to start the series, we've seen what happens when you go away from home, you don't always get back to your home stadium for that pivotal game 5 in this case, or game 7 in other cases. So protecting the home field is huge, especially after what happened to end last season. Don't let the kind of aura that's around Citizens Bank Park in the postseason, don't let it fade in back-to-back series, because you went out sad against the Diamondbacks and then you started sad against your arguably biggest rival.
Yeah, it'll be hard to get that back if that happens. All that hype around that will be gone. All right, I didn't want to extend this too much further, so let's just get to the point here. What is your prediction?
I know what you're going to say based on the title in the top left. I will do the opposite. I will go with us in 4. I don't know if it's just because I read the article that Jeff Passan wrote twice today, or I feel like he's going to be locked in. We've seen what kind of happens when, granted this is from a while ago, but we see what kind of happens when people talk about the Phillies or say a comment or something when this core, specifically Harper's around. And in 2022, when he signed, Kodai Senga said that he is most looking forward to facing the Phillies lineup. That tweet has suddenly resurfaced since he was announced as the NLDS starter. I'm choosing to believe that Harper does something about it. I think the offense has a good series. I feel like the last time we as a fan base were genuinely like this type of nervous energy on a timeline, at least you and I a bit, was the Marlins series, and the offense kind of shut us up and handled business against a good pitching staff that we thought was going to cause us problems. So I'll take us in 4. I feel good with our pitching. Alonso waking up scares me a bit, just because
they were about to run him out of the building.
I've talked more garbage on that man, and there's no athlete that I hate more than him. So that almost felt like a warning shot to me that he was coming to handle business against me personally. But I'll go with us in 4. I feel better than I did yesterday about it.
Yeah, maybe if I wake up tomorrow, I'll feel better. I opened with it. It's just defying logic. I'd feel like obviously I want the Phillies to win. I feel like I'm just lying to myself if I don't pick the Mets, and then just hope for. And I do believe this. If the Phillies beat the Mets, I'm picking them to win the World Series. Like, I'm going to pick them in every other series they play in after this. But I'm going to take the Mets in 4 just because, like, I feel this screwed up energy that I've seen before, and it doesn't make sense. And I don't want it to make sense, but like, it just defies everything. And like, the baseball playoffs are always like this, and there's all these weird parallels where every team that's beaten the Brewers in the playoffs has ended up in the World Series, and the NL 6 seed is 2 for 2 on making the World Series. Like, there's all these screwed up things that don't make sense to me, and I don't want them to happen, but I feel like they are, and it just hurts. If it gets game 5, though, I think the Phillies win, because I think Zach Wheeler shoves it home. I feel good about that. So that's why I think, unfortunately, it ends in 4. I think the Phillies actually win game 1, and I think they get screwed the next 3. I'm hoping to be wrong.
I will say, the Mets magic started a little bit earlier than the Phillies did that year. With the play-in game, in a sense, on Monday with Lindor's home run there, and then Alonso's in the wild card. It was like, I hate to say this in the same sentence because, like I just said, I despise Pete Alonso, but like, that home run for the Mets franchise is kind of like reminiscent. Obviously, the wild card is so much different than clinching a berth to the World Series, but like, with their radio call and everything, it was like their version of Bedlam at the Bank almost.
I thought the same thing.
And the Phillies lost the next series after that, so that's keeping me going. I don't know. I'm trying to gather things that are positive and push out the negative, but I talk to you too much, so the negative's starting to creep in. But I'm going to try and block your number for the next week.
All right. Look, I want to be wrong. I get these feelings, and it's just like like when they lost Game 6 last year, I knew it was over. Like I knew they lost Game 7, and when I saw Pete Alonso hit that home run last night, it's like I got that same feeling, and I'm dreading it. I hope I'm wrong. Yeah, I just hope I'm wrong. I have nothing else to say. All right, I guess sometime next week. I hate all these freaking games now during this week start early because of that freaking West Coast series.
I have tickets for Friday if it goes to Game 5, so gonna have to call off work or take a half day for that one.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to get COVID on Monday, I guess. I don't know what else. This is ridiculous. Screw the West Coast. Yeah, so we will talk at some point. I don't know how I'll feel when we're talking, but it's gonna happen at some point. And if you don't hear from me, it was so ridiculous. We'll just pop up in November with an off-season predictions video.
Yeah.
So we'll see. We'll see.